The Egyptian president condemns the efforts of the Arab Organization for Industrialization. The Lebanese president urges citizens to unify efforts to shield Lebanon from regional conflicts. And the Palestinian Prime Minister urgently appeals to the international community to hold the systematic starvation of Gaza. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has met with chairman of the Arab Organization for Industrialization, Lieutenant General Mukhtar Abdel Latif, to review progress in civil and defense industries. Abdel Latif highlighted the strategy of the AOI to boost local manufacturing, localize modern technology, and partner with leading companies to become a regional industrial power. That involves upgrading production lines, training personnel, supporting research, deepening military manufacturing for both local needs and export, and introducing new industries to meet market demands, aiming for self-sufficiency and increased exports. The meeting showcased AOI's diverse civil industries, including transportation, electronics, clean energy, and various other sectors. President Fattah el-Sisi commended the efforts of the AOI, stressing the need for increased production, competitive pricing, deeper local manufacturing, technology localization, and robust supply chains to reduce imports and support the national economy, emphasizing coordination among all industrial entities.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has urged citizens to unify efforts and responsibility to shield Lebanon from regional conflicts. Aoun emphasized that rational stance regarding the regrettable events in Syria were instrumental in containing tensions. The Lebanese president's message underscored the critical need for internal cohesion and prudent decision-making to safeguard Lebanon's stability amidst volatile regional dynamics, ensuring the nations avoid being drawn into wider disputes and maintains its fragile peace. U.S. Ambassador to Turkey and U.S. Special Envoy for Syria Thomas Barak has affirmed U.S. President Donald Trump's desire for Lebanon's stability, crucial for regional peace. Following his meeting with the Lebanese official, Barak outlined the U.S. focus on bolstering economic reforms and assisting Lebanon in finding solutions with neighboring countries. He noted that failed ceasefire in Lebanon, stating that Washington wouldn't compel Israel's actions. While acknowledging Hezbollah's disarmament as an internal Lebanese issue, Barak stressed that failure to achieve it would be disappointing. He also confirmed no current plans for sanctions against Lebanese officials. U.S. Ambassador to Turkey and U.S. Special Envoy for Syria Thomas Barak has described the situation in Syria as horrific, stressing the urgent need for a more inclusive solution that integrates minorities into power. Speaking from Lebanon, he emphasized the Syrian government's accountability for the country's developments and expressed deep concern over events in Sweden. Barak called for the Syrian government to engage with all segments of its population, reiterating the importance of minority inclusion and governance. And he also affirmed that the United States would not deploy more troops to hostile environments.
All the events in Syria is with
Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has claimed that Israel attacks in Sweden and Damascus were the sole means to halt a massacre against the Druze in Syria. According to the Israeli media, Katz asserted that Israel's Syrian policy includes maintaining a military presence on Jabal al-Sheikh and within a security zone, specifically to protect the Druze population. He reiterated that these strikes on Syrian regime targets were the only way to prevent further atrocities against the Druze community.
ישראל נלחמת להגנתם. אני מברך את צה"ל על ההשתלטות המהירה והבטוחה.
Moving on to Tehran, where Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has emphasized the need to Europeans to understand Tehran's strong stance in upcoming talks. He stated Iran's negotiating approach has become more resolute, vowing to defend their rights in discussions with the European Troika. Araghchi confirmed Iran holds strong cards and will pursue its post-war rights more forcibly, documenting Israeli crimes and engaging international bodies. He accused Israel of using European and US officials for its aims, promising Israel would pay the price for its aggression. That comes as the next round of talks in Istanbul will cover the nuclear file and sanctions removal at the deputy foreign minister's level. In Yemen, the Israeli Air Force has conducted airstrikes on Houthi targets in Yemen's Al Hodeidah airport. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz stated that military forcefully confronts attempts to restore previously attacked terror infrastructure, vowing continued action to protect Israel. Katz warned the Houthis would pay a heavy price for missile launches toward Israel, equating Yemen's fate to Tehran's. The Israelis' occupation military confirmed striking fuel depots, Houthi military vessels, engineering equipment for port rehabilitation, and other military objectives, asserting any threat to Israel, regardless of distance, will be targeted. Israeli Army radio has reported that air defense forces intercepted a drone launched from Yemen without activating the alert system, rather the alert system. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz stated that military forcefully confronts attempts to restore previously attacked terror infrastructure, vowing continued action to protect Israel. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa has urgently appealed to the international community to halt the systematic starvation of Gaza. In a powerful address, he condemned Israel's destructive policies, emphasizing the deliberate targeting of civilian life, the daily killing of 28 children, and the forced displacement of most residents. The Palestinian Prime Minister declared Gaza as a graveyard for children facing catastrophic famine, urging genuine international action to end the war and Israel's use of starvation as a weapon. Israeli occupation forces have abducted the director of field hospitals in Gaza, Dr. Marwan al-Hams, from a Red Cross hospital in Khan Yunis. Gaza's health ministry condemned the cowardly act, holding Israel responsible for his safety. They assert his detention is a direct attack on the voice of Gaza's suffering, aimed at silencing a key medical figure who exposed the plight of children and the broader health catastrophe. Dr. Al-Hams had previously warned about hospital massacres and severe medicine shortages, crippling Gaza's healthcare amidst relentless Israeli targeting of civilians and a dire humanitarian crisis. The German foreign minister has condemned the targeting of civilians during the distribution in Gaza, labeling such violence as absolutely unacceptable. That comes as Germany strongly supports the World Food Programme's urgent call for an immediate and expanded influx of humanitarian assistance into the region. Germany emphasized that protecting civilians seeking aid is paramount, and any acts of aggression against them are indefensible and must cease immediately to ensure vital supplies reach those in desperate need. The Belgian Federal Police has arrested 2 Israeli soldiers accused of committing war crimes in Gaza following a complaint filed by 2 human rights organizations. A statement released on Monday by the Hind Ragab Foundation said that 2 soldiers were in the country to attend the music festival and that legal proceedings are currently underway. Gaza's civil defense has reported that the Israeli army carried out artillery shelling in the city of Deir al-Balah in the central Gaza Strip following warnings of an imminent operation in an area where no previous military activity has taken place during the war. That comes as the Israeli occupation army issued an evacuation order for residents of central Gaza as it expanded its operations around Deir al-Balah, including in an area where it had not operated before since the war began 21 months ago. The death toll from the Israeli occupation assault on the Gaza Strip has risen to more than 59,000 deaths and more than 142,100 injured since October the 7th, 2023. Medical sources reported on Monday that among the total are 8,196 deaths and 30,094 injured since March the 18th, when the Israeli occupation forces resumed its assault on the Gaza Strip following the ceasefire agreement. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, has renewed its call to lift the Israeli siege on the Gaza Strip to end the ongoing famine. In a post on X, the agency stated it had received desperate messages about famine from Gaza, including from our own staff, and repeated that the food prices have skyrocketed by 40 times, highlighting the severe impact of the continued blockade. For more analysis, we now move on to Salma Al-Fay in our newsroom. Salma?
Thank you, Rana. And for further analysis, we are joined from Cairo by Al Ahram newspaper managing editor Ashraf Al-Ashri. Welcome, sir, to Qnews. Given the Palestinian Prime Minister's urgent appeal and the dire warnings of the catastrophic famine, what do you think are the specific international mechanisms or interventions do you think are the most effective in maybe compelling Israel to halt its alleged policy of the starvation in Gaza?
Certainly. The international calls of the last few hours have increased as there is a dire famine and the killing of the children due to the shortage of the food supplies, along with hundreds of civilians who were killed due to the shortage of the aids. And even the war was labeled as skilled and should be seized immediately. And even the King of Belgium has appealed to the ceasefire, and along with the Prime Minister's appeal, I think the court now, even the court of the United Nations and the United States, Netanyahu wanted to change the equation for the Palestinians, to force them to be displaced after the failure of the pursuing and the killing that failed to have some sort of setback by leaving the Palestinians of the Gaza Strip. And therefore the international community, along with the humanitarian aid and the EU, has addressed the crisis last week and making a deal with Israel not to have sanctions against Israel in return of delivering the tons of the load trucks. And up till now, this decision wasn't decisively prevailed. In order to save the situation, in order to prevent the dire famine and the killing of hundreds of thousands due to the killing starvations, due to the failure of the GHF of delivering aid by us, and in order to give an opportunity of the delivering the aid by the responding of more pressure, otherwise Gaza will be transferred to be like a killing field.
Sir, the abduction of Dr. Marwan al-Hams, who's of course a key medical figure, is condemned as an act of silence to the voice of Gaza suffering. How might this act, do you think, impact the already fragile healthcare system in Gaza and the delivery of critical aid?
The health sector is in a very critical sector about to be collapsed, and even there is no sort of health unit and hospitals for the renal failure patients or the injured or even the killed patient carried by the donkey cart in Gaza, as the ambulances vehicles aren't operative due to the shortage of the oil and solar. The hospitals were not operated, and Dr. Hams and others, the abduction is a bit by Israel to let the health workers to suffer in a bid to silence the voices and requesting the international community to intervene and to stop the humanitarian catastrophe. And I think the international community as a whole is condemning Israel. Even the United States, through statement by yesterday by U.S. officials to access agency state citing that Netanyahu now is acting like a crazy man in Gaza Strip and the south of Lebanon, and this matter would lead for the United States and others to be intervened. I think that the humanitarian and health exercises in a cursed war by Netanyahu, and its main goal is trisecting the Palestinian people in order to silence the voices of having Netanyahu held accountable and to provide some concession by Hamas in order to implement the displacement resolution.
Sir, Germany, let me move on to my next question. Germany has strongly condemned the targeting of civilians during the aid distribution. What do you think are the implications of such strong condemnations from international partners, and how might they translate this into tangible pressure on Israel?
Israel has lost its reputation internationally, even its closest allies in the EU, all the whole world in the East, along with the Middle East. Israel's reputation has lost its stature internationally, and labeling the Prime Minister as the killers of children, and therefore this exercises and even the statement that we could not targeting what's happening to the Palestinians throughout the 50 years, and so the condemnation of the international institution in the better to pressure Israel and expose all the manipulations by the Israeli officials that would lead some sort of ruptures in the international relation and even in Israel. And also they called for some sort of an international isolation in the long run. Some says that the ICG would continue to pursue the Israeli officials for Netanyahu to provide more concession with regard to the international and judiciary's demands.
Sir, the Israeli army's expansion of operations into previously untouched areas like Deir el-Balah, coupled with evacuation orders, this all raises concerns. What do you think are the humanitarian consequences of these expanding military operations, particularly for the displaced populations?
Certainly, all the Israeli approach with regard to establishing humanitarian zones have failed, and Israel is about to launch a new project with a full blockade in case of the establishment of such alleged humanitarian loads to be felt. And all the previous acts proves that Israel is pursuing to implement the policy of the burned downs due to the international pressures and that are pursuing to have some sort of a truce within 2 weeks before the upcoming days of the officials in Israel. Israel has nothing to do to withdraw, the Knesset, to have some sort of to execute a truce, otherwise the Israeli forces will continue to do the brutal acts along with the policy of starvation and following. Certainly, Israel is facing a great risk of pursuing an international rupture, and due to their acts to continue displacing the people from the center of Gaza into the south and the north.
And that was Mr. Ashraf El-Ashri from Cairo, El Ahram newspaper managing editor. Thank you, sir, for joining us on Qnews. And now we'll go back to Rana Al-Assas in our studio. Rana.
Thank you very much, Salma. And now we move on to the latest developments in Russia and Ukraine. The Kremlin has announced that a meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump is likely to take place in Beijing this September, contingent on Trump's attendance in China. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov confirmed Putin will be in Beijing for the 80th anniversary of the World War II's end, but was unsure of Trump's participation. Regarding the Russian-Ukraine crisis, Peskov stated there are no changes to Russia's negotiation team for upcoming talks with Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced prospective deals by the French companies aimed at launching drone production in Ukraine. Zelensky said on X after he met with French Foreign Minister in Kyiv that his country is ready to expand joint defense production. There is a decision by French companies to begin manufacturing drones in Ukraine, and this is highly valuable.
Припинення вбивств. І потрібна зустріч на рівні лідерів, щоб реально забезпечити мир. Дійсно, тривало. Україна.
A decree signed by Russian President Vladimir Putin has mandated that foreign vessels must obtain authorization from the Russian Federal Security Service before entering the country's ports. The decree, published on Monday, states that the FSB must approve the entry permit issued to foreign ships by port authorities. And moving on to Japan, where the ruling coalition has lost its majority in the upper house following yesterday's elections, marking a turning point, especially as it is the first time to the Liberal Democratic Party's 7-decade history that it leads a coalition without control of either chamber of parliament. The coalition, consisting of the Liberal Democratic Party and its partner, Komito, needed to win 50 new seats to maintain control of the upper house. However, the two parties secured only 47 seats combined, falling short of the majority threshold. The Japanese Prime Minister has expressed his intention to remain in office despite the severe defeat his coalition suffered in Sunday's legislative elections, which resulted in the loss of its majority in both houses of parliament. In a press conference, he stated that external changes such as international developments or climate-related disasters cannot wait for political conditions to be improved. He said that the avoid paralyzing political life, he believes it is his duty to carry on in leading the party that received the highest number of votes. And moving on to South Korea's Ministry of Unification has announced that the government is exploring several options to improve strained relations with North Korea, including reconsidering the possibility of allowing individual tours to the north. South Korea's president, who recently took office, has taken a series of steps, including the halting loudspeaker broadcasts critical of North Korea along the border and banning leaflet campaigns. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi praises the effort of the Arab Organization for Industrialization. The Lebanese president urges citizens to unify efforts to shield Lebanon from regional conflicts. And the Palestinian Prime Minister urgently appeals to the international community to hold the systematic starvation of Gaza. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok, and Qnews EG to stay informed. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.